Targeting Truth, Spiritual GPS.
Have you ever heard of the sinner's prayer? The one where you confess you're a sinner and then you ask Jesus into your heart? Maybe you've even recited this prayer in hopes of being saved. But here's something to consider. You won't find this prayer in the Bible anywhere. Today we're going to look at the real problem of sin. Once we understand the problem, we will also see why the sinner's prayer is no solution. Unfortunately, in our world, sin is normal. We're sinners, and we're surrounded by sinners. When sin is the norm, one of the natural tendencies is to blow it off, to say that it's no big deal. However, nothing could be further from the truth. Sin is a really big deal. And we can't even begin to talk about the solution of this problem until we've come to grips with the severity of the problem. The harsh reality is that sin separates us from God. Let's go back to the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve were full of life and joy in the garden, and there was only one rule. God said that they could eat from any tree in Eden except the one in the middle of the garden. The fruit of this tree was the knowledge of good and evil. God said, "For in the day that you eat from it, you shall surely die." Did you catch that? The consequence of disobedience to God is death. Of course, the devil, the great deceiver, came along with a different story. Satan said, "You surely shall not die." Adam and Eve caved in to the lust of the flesh, the lust of the eyes, and the boastful pride of life. They saw that the tree was good for food. They saw that it was a delight to the eyes. They saw that the tree was desirable to make them wise. And they ate. Satan sold the lie, "Be your own God," and they bought. Now, Adam and Eve didn't die physically that day, but they died just as God said they would. They died a spiritual death as they were separated from God. They lost access to walk and talk with God. They were banished from the tree of life. Spiritual death was immediate, and physical death began to set in. The truth of the matter is that each one of us has undergone the same experience encountered by Adam and Eve. We too started as innocent babies in fellowship with God. But we fell for the lie, and we chose to be our own God. Then we died. We were separated from God. We partook of the worst drug of all, spiritual LSD, lust, sin, death. As James 1:14-15 says, "But each one is tempted when he is carried away and enticed by his own lust. Then when lust is conceived, it gives birth to sin. And when sin is accomplished, it brings forth death." This separation between us and God is no minor schism. It's a gulf that spans the distance from hell to heaven. This isn't something that we can resolve on our own. So how do we get this problem fixed? The standard religious answer is to say the sinner's prayer. But does that really work? Let's think for a second. When Adam and Eve sinned, they lost access to walk and talk with God. Guess what? When you sinned, you also forfeited the right to be heard by God. Isaiah 59 verses 1 and 2 is very clear. "Behold, the Lord's hand is not so short that it cannot save, neither is his ear so dull that it cannot hear. But your iniquities have made a separation between you and your God, and your sins have hidden his face from you, so that he does not hear." In other words, the sinner's prayer doesn't work. It can't work. Search the scriptures. You won't find one example in the New Testament of a person being saved through a prayer. You can't find someone accepting Jesus into their heart through prayer. It isn't in the Bible. And the idea of the sinner's prayer actually is in direct conflict with what the Bible teaches about the problem of sin. Sin is a big deal. Sin is a major problem, and we can't solve this problem by avoiding it. We first need to recognize the serious predicament that we're in. Then we need to turn to the Bible for God's solution. We will get to the good news in future episodes, but today our focus is on the problem. The lie is that the problem of sin can be resolved simply through the sinner's prayer. The truth is that sin has separated us from God, and only Christ can set the terms for the repair of this relationship. Join us for our next episode. What about children?
Targeting Truth, Spiritual GPS.